I have to say, you single-handedly ignited a debate on the issue of work and family balance and the role of women in the workplace. We're all interested in hearing about leadership from you in terms of what we could be doing and what we should be doing to promote the next generation of leadership.
You know, nothing could have prepared me for what happened after this article was published. I mean, absolutely nothing. I knew that a certain number of people would find it interesting. I thought I was writing for a relatively small audience. It went viral. I specialize in social media and technology, and I had no idea what going viral meant. I guess maybe the best way to explain it is 2 days or 3 days after it was published, and I was in Europe, and we flew back. It was a family vacation. I'm on the front page of the New York Times, and my mother calls up and says, "What have you done?" I knew that I was talking from a white privilege perspective. I said that in the article. I knew that. But I didn't fully realize how, when someone like me says "we," it excludes as much as it includes. So I would give a talk about the article and about the responses to the article, and someone would raise their hand and say, "You know, you keep talking about how women have always been in the home and the feminist movement was about getting women out of the home. You know, if you're an African-American woman, your ancestors were not in the home. They were out of the home, and actually being able to be in the home was something to be desired." I increasingly think this is about why don't we have enough diverse voices at the top tables to be making the best decisions. And there, I'll just talk for a second about my own field in foreign policy. If you have a group of men making decisions, you will get different decisions than if you have a group of men and women. In reading lots of books on leadership and on the future of work, because I think we ought to be framing a lot of this in terms not of work and family so much as the future of work and the changes we need to be competitive and productive and creative. And it's even harder on men than it is on women. Because one of the things that men wrote to me was, you think it's hard as a working mother to say, I need flexibility around when I come in or when I go home, or I need to work one day at home, one day a week from home, or whatever ways you need to make it fit together. If you're a woman and you say that, you're told you're not committed to your career. If you're a man and you say that, you're also told you're not committed to your career. But you're told, in addition, are you really a guy? Are you really one of the guys? There is an entire layer here that is about how we define masculinity, that if we're actually going to enable men to be fully engaged caregivers, as many, many, many of them want to be, you're going to have to crack open. And you're going to have to start valuing people who are caregivers as well as breadwinners in ways that are as big a culture change as the culture change we've been through around women. Think about it in terms of different chunks, and think about, and this is the key point that I say to all young women, think about having 20 years on the other end of your kids. Young women today have a life expectancy, relative privileged young women, have a life expectancy of 86. Now think about that. That means 1/3 of young women today can expect to live to 100. Now, you really gonna get your career sort of peak at, say, 50 or 55 and then retire at 65 or 70? You've got 30 years on the other side of that. I don't know about you, but I want to be working in projects and all sorts of exciting things well into, as far as I can go. My father's 82, he's still working as a lawyer and very happy about it. If you think about it that way, then you think, okay, here's where I need to get to put in as much as I can to get myself to a good place so that when I need to slow down, I'm still in the game. So you don't want to drop out, but you do want to be able to defer promotions, jobs that have a lot of travel, things that will not fit when you have intense caregiving responsibilities. And then you want to think about, how do I develop the portfolio of skills and experiences during that period that then allow me to ramp back up on the other end. There's a lot I think we need to tell young women and young men about how to prepare for their career and how to stay in the game. The next part, though, really does go to firms, right? Because this won't work, right, if you're faced with lean in or opt out. And that is still what many firms are saying. They say, no, you can make it work, but the minute you take the part-time option, you're devalued, right? Many women who have opted out say, really, I didn't opt out, I was shut out. And I was shut out because although the policies were there on paper, the minute I took them, I was no longer a player. And we all know what that feels like. And the minute you're not a player and you're juggling and you're, as I say, as a working mom, there's a bad ear infection can knock out an entire week, right? I mean, you're juggling all that. And if you're not valued in the workplace, the likelihood that at some point you're going to say this is not worth it is much greater. So what we need to change in the workplace is not the policies. A lot of us have the policies. It's having the policies and valuing the people who are, as I said, juggling, breadwinning, and caregiving every bit as much as we value the people who are not. And that's a huge culture shift.
Can you talk a little bit more about innovative ways to balance work and family? I mean, in some of your other articles, you talk about the presumptive yes, you talk about the hierarchy versus your web-based connections. You really have a series of different insights that sort of take it to the next level. Could you share those with us?
There are two ways you can lead. You're sitting there and somebody comes in and they make a proposal and your reflexive instinct is, why would we want to do that? And you ask all these questions from a position of, why would we want to do that? That's the presumptive no. The burden is on the person to convince you it's a good idea. The presumptive yes is the reverse, which is, that's a really interesting idea. Let's think about that. Now, you still may not get to doing it. This is not an absolute yes. People have ideas that maybe sound interesting but are not good. But the way you manage and the way you respond when someone comes to you, in my experience, the culture of the presumptive yes with respect to you, more generally, encourages energy and innovation and all sorts of good things. Around work and family, it means you say to everyone who works with you, you tell me what you need, and let's see if we can make it work. We may not be able to. It's not a blanket yes, because I may say, this just isn't gonna work on this team. But my starting point is, let's see if we can make that work. The one place that is not customized is the workplace. And that's crazy. For all the reasons that everything else is customized. You want to attract and retain the best talent, you need to be able to think about how do you customize the way that person works with the services you need to provide, right? It's not all, but we customize things for clients, we also need to customize things for the people in our workplaces. My generation is gonna wanna work longer. We're gonna have to work longer, right? Economically, we know this. We are the smaller number of people underneath coming behind us cannot support us. We are going to have to work longer. As we work longer, we're not going to want to work the kind of hours many of you are working now. We're going to change careers. We're going to want to work more flexibly. We're going to want to work part-time. So you're going to actually see this pressure on both sides, from young people coming in and from older people who are going to still be in the workplace but want to work very differently. And the final part, as I said, for the pressure, is those firms that really get that these changes are going to do much better in terms of recruiting, retaining, productivity, innovation, all the other good things we want. So I see pressures coming from in all directions, demographic and competitive. Talk to your daughters or your sons and ask them what they need to make it possible for them to have the careers you want and your grandchildren. If you do only that, you will come up with a whole list of things to be done. And the changes around many managing partners who, particularly if they have daughters, but honestly, I really think it's daughters and sons, who suddenly see the world through different lenses is important. So that's the first thing. I think often the changes we need to make are very close to home if you're receptive to hear them. The second thing that I would say very concretely is really opening up the conversation and allowing yourself to hear things you don't want to hear. There is a very good paper out by two professors at Harvard Business School who worked for a major consulting firm for a year around how to get more women in top ranks, which is how we framed the question. So they did all this work, and they actually discovered that the rate of turnover was pretty much the same for men and for women. And the reason for that rate of turnover was because the culture of work was simply unsustainable. It was impossible, right? People could not work in that firm and have a life. But the senior partner, I'm just quoting you from the articles, the senior partners didn't want to hear that. They wanted to hear, it's really about how we make it possible for these poor women who are trying to juggle their work and their kids, and what other policies can we change to make this possible? And these consultants came back and said, no, that's not the issue. The issue is the culture of work. The issue is serious mismanagement, where you're not asking managers to think ahead of time and to schedule work in ways that don't require last-minute crunches or minimize last-minute crunches, that really change how we value time management and what we value and how we value results output over hours input. So the second thing I would say is some of this, and you know this is true in big law, and you know big law is in crisis in part because of it. Some of this is because we fetishize the way we work. It really is, right? And I've been there. I have pulled more all-nighters, and I have bragged about the all-nighters I've pulled, and I've talked about, flying out to the West Coast, and I got an extra 3 hours on the plane because then I had an extra 3 hours in the day. A lot of this, I've been there, I know this, and I come from a family of workaholics. A lot of what has to be undone is not actually the best way to get work done. There are better ways, there are ways that you can get an equal amount done that do not require your being on 24/7. And a lot of people who've come up that way don't really want to hear that. I'm being very frank, but I think that I'm looking over at Brad. That's presumably what you wanted. So that's the second thing. You need to have a conversation and be willing to hear things that really go against your own grain in many, many ways, because it isn't just about women and families. It really is a broader issue. And the third thing I would say, and we covered it, is really adopt a sort of let's try to do things differently, and let's experiment. And let's really experiment the way you'd experiment with anything else, and have some metrics and put the metrics out there in terms of, is the work getting done, and is this person able to do what she or he says they can do in working in different ways. The last thing I'll say, and this is as important as anything else, Pam Stone, who's a sociologist at Hunter, who wrote a wonderful book on women who, quote unquote, opted out. She's the one who came back and said many of them really were shut out. They didn't opt out, they were shut out. She says we need stay policies, not leave policies. We need to look at the men and women who come in and think about how can we keep them over the course of a career that is going to have lots of different periods. And if somebody is saying to you, I now need to work part-time, or I now need to take some time, the question you have to ask is, how can we keep you on a potential leadership track?